Hi Business Essentials students. So we are in week 4 of our continuous learning, and this week we're going to talk about management functions. But before we get into management functions, I want to review some of the concepts that we talked about last week when we talked about business ownership, and then also maybe add a little bit to that, just some little pieces that we maybe didn't get a chance to cover in our material from last week, but that you will still have as far as your information going forward. And then we'll jump into management functions and some of the ins and outs of that, and talk about your assignments for this week. So as we review last week, you will remember that last week we had 3 main types of ownership that we talked about. The first one is sole proprietorship, the second one is partnership, and the third one is corporations. Sole proprietorships, as you may remember, are businesses or small businesses that are typically ran by one person, hence sole proprietorship. A partnership is a business or an organization that is ran by 2 or more people, but still done in a private matter. And then finally, corporation is when the particular company has been made public. It can be still run by one person or run by 2 or more people, but you can also have shareholders and things like that take part in the business, which reduce the amount of liability and responsibility that individuals have. So these are some of the things that we're going to keep in mind as we move forward. And you read your P&G article about Procter & Gamble and how they went through these different types of ownership throughout the course of their business. And they are now a global leader as far as companies are concerned. Something else I wanted to mention, and that's here at the bottom. There are other types of businesses or ownerships of businesses. Some would be considered cooperatives. That's where they work together to maybe cooperate and make functions work well. And then there's something called franchises, which is basically where you get to be your own owner, but you're conducting a business that's already been formulated and designed. And so I could buy a franchise of McDonald's, and I would have McDonald's expertise to run the business, but it would still be my own, and I would still get to take part in the profits. And then finally, we have nonprofits, which their focus and their goal is usually based on a mission rather than profits themselves. So that is kind of our quick little review of what we covered last week. Now, moving forward to this week. Okay, so our first focus for this week is going to be different types of businesses. So we've talked about different types of ownership, but within those ownership types, there are different types of businesses. The most common are listed here. You have your producers, which are usually the ones who come up with things like raw goods. So you can think of those who maybe do fishing or forestry or maybe agriculture. They're the producers. So you can think of produce as being a producer. So people who plant goods and harvest them, they would be considered producers for business reasons. Then you have your processors. This is where they take something and they make it into something else. So you can think about sugarcane being used as a resource to create various things that contain sugar. That's the process of them. You're processing those goods, therefore they're considered processors. Then there's manufacturers. Manufacturers are typically those types of items that are created via like an assembly line. You can think of maybe cars that are created on an assembly line, or you can think of maybe a computer created on an assembly line. Think of manufacturing plants or factories. That's usually what we're talking about when we talk about manufacturing businesses. Then there's wholesalers. So think about those as your big box stores or those that contain items that you can purchase in bulk. In our t-shirt shop, we use a t-shirt wholesaler to give us the shirts that we use for our business because we're a retailer. We take the shirts from the wholesaler and we sell them to other people, usually after doing some process to them. So we kind of combine some of these different business types. We're kind of processors, we're wholesalers and retailers at the same time. And then online stores, you might want to keep in mind because they can usually be any of these types of businesses or a combination of them as well. And so a lot of businesses that do these things can be online and can be in an actual storefront. So it kind of just depends on the type of business that they are, what they're trying to sell, who their market and their customers are, will determine the type of business that somebody starts. So we talked about the ownership aspect. But now here's the actual business aspect, and depending on the type of product or service that you're trying to sell, or the number of products or services that you're trying to sell, that's going to determine the type of business that maybe you consider opening up. So the next thing that comes into play in businesses are their functions. And every business has to do a series of functions, and there are kind of 5 main areas of functions for all businesses. And those 5 main areas include what is listed here. Production and procurement, which is basically the improvement of items for sale, and then also the gathering of sale items that have already been produced for the idea of resale value. So basically just gathering and producing what you want to be able to sell in your business. So there needs to be somebody who oversees that task. Now sometimes there's going to be one person that does all of these things if it's a really small business. But the larger the business is, the more people you may need to oversee some of these different functions. The second function is marketing. And next to this, I have the 4 P's of marketing written down because there are 4 P's associated with marketing. There's price, so setting the price for the items that you're selling. There's promotion. How are you going to let others know about that? There's the product itself, what are you selling? And then finally, position. How will it be seen by customers? Where will it be in the store? What is going to be the way that customers will find it? So all of those P's are part of the marketing function. And again, if you're a small business, you might be doing this as well as all the other functions. But if you're a larger business, there might be one person in charge of marketing, or there might be multiple people in charge of marketing, depending on how large your business is and the number of items or types of things that you're trying to sell or make profit off of. Then there's the management function. So we often hear about managers or bosses or leaders. We're going to get to them a lot more here in a moment. But basically what you need to know is the POCL, planning, organizing, controlling, and leading. Those are the main things that managers do. They plan, they organize, they control what's going on, and then they lead. And those are the main functions of management, which we're going to get to here in just a moment because we're going to really focus on management today. And that's actually what your assignment for the week, along with your choice board option, is going to be revolving around. And then we have finance and accounting. And I list them kind of together because a lot of people put them in the same category, but they are still different things. Finance focuses on decision making based on financial statements. And then accounting, those are the people that make the financial statements. And I can't say this enough, but I'll say it again. Depending on the size of your business, there might be, one person or 2 people doing all of these functions all of the time. But if your business is a lot larger, you might start developing, specific tasks and specific jobs for specific people rather than one person overseeing all of this. So as your business grows, so will the number of employees that you have, and so will the number of people that you have associated with helping with the different functions. But ultimately, these are all the functions that exist in every single business. Okay, so as promised, we're going to look a little deeper into the management functions today. So if you look at the functions of management, there are 4 of them, and I already mentioned them before, but I'll go ahead and give more explicit instruction on them now. There's the planning, organizing, controlling, and leading functions. In the planning phase, what management does is they start thinking about all the things that they need to do and writing out goals and setting expectations and things along those lines. And so here I've drawn a little checklist so you can kind of imagine what the planning process might look like. Think about if you're writing a paper, the planning process is when you're brainstorming and coming up with ideas for what you want the eventual paper to look like. Then organizing is where you actually pull together all the resources. So again, let's kind of go back to our writing a paper illustration. This would be you finding resources and different citations for you to use within your paper. So finding the factual evidence and bringing it all together so that way when it actually comes time to do the task, you're ready to go. So you've planned out your paper and now you've pulled together all the things that you need to do it. You've got your computer, you're ready to start typing away because you've got all the resources you need, all the citations ready to go, and you're ready to start putting it into that organized, formal piece of writing. Then there's the controlling aspect. Okay, this is the, here's the problem, here's the solution. So this would be like the editing part of your paper. Okay, this would be the piece where you're actually going and saying, okay, I've written this paper now. Here's some problem areas we saw. What are we going to do to correct those so that we can make a really good finished piece? And then the leading part is when you're done and you're actually going to present that paper, and now you're ready to guide and direct others in that process of paper writing because now you've done it. You know what you're doing and you're ready to guide and direct those who have done it or who need to do it still. So this is, these are the functions of management, but if you were to look at it in a situation that you've all probably been in, writing a paper, they're quite simple to understand. And these are the functions of management. Okay, so the question comes, is management the right fit for you? And I think the best way to really look at this is to look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of being in management. And so depending on the size of company that you're in, management functions and roles are going to look slightly different and maybe, be on a greater or a lesser scale depending on the size of your organization or maybe the number of people involved in your organization. However, all of the functions of management will be there. And so here are the pros and cons, or the advantages and disadvantages of being in management. So a lot of the times on the pros side, you'll see more money involved. With more money, a lot of people typically think, oh, I could be a leader. If I made that kind of money, I could do those types of things. I could be in management. But oftentimes with more money becomes more problems. Okay, you've probably heard the expression, more money, more problems. Oftentimes making more money means you're probably going to take on more of the blame and the responsibility in terms of what is expected. If an employee, a regular employee, can't do the task, it might be up to management to take the place of that employee. And so oftentimes it can be more work as well. Typically in an organization, if you're a good manager, respect is as an advantage. Oftentimes there's more influence in the decision making of a business or an organization, and also you have greater control of your actual time and how you spend it. This is true to some circumstances, but it also could mean that more of your time is taken up also. So maybe you have some flexibility in how it's done, but oftentimes managers do work more than regular employees. So on the con side, we already talked about the more blame or responsibility aspect, but also one of the greater concerns is that mistakes can tend to be more costly for those who are in management, because oftentimes the decisions that you make affect more than just yourself. And so sometimes those mistakes can be extremely costly, not only costly to yourself or your organization, but maybe to your employees, which spreads the cost around. And then finally, there's also greater pressure and stress associated with the management position. So, some people handle stress really, really well and do well under pressure, and so these people might be cut out for management positions. And other people can't really handle the stress. So you need to know yourself, and you need to know what's the expectation when it comes to management, and if it is the right fit for you or not. Okay, so this week for your assignments, week 4, you are to read the Leader versus Boss article that I provided for you. And on this article, at the bottom of the document, there are some questions that you are supposed to respond to. Please do so in complete sentences. That is your first assignment for the week. And your second assignment, just like every other previous week, is a choice board assignment. So choose one option from the choice board and complete that for your second assignment. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. You have my email. You can always contact me there. And you also have my Google Voice number, and you are free to call or text that whenever is necessary or convenient for you. So please don't hesitate to call me. And otherwise, have a great week.